it faster, we need it more sufficient and more strong, like to improve every detail of our spatial cinema scene. So that it is, that was our first step. And actually this kind of project gave life to other next projects, because now we are doing, like, for example, interactive museum on the streets. It means that different characters from different places in a quite long prospect can interact with the end user. And we talk about big models, big size models, 3D models. We need to move ahead with some kind of better graphics. I mean, with more realistic one, but still we have some limits of Unity. We still have some limits, technical limits of platforms. And let's say we have a lot of things to do to be closer to metaverse and perfect metaverse. So, and it's challenging, it's beautiful, and well, we are ready. Actually, I talked about results as well.
Okay, so I'll stop sharing now. Are we good?
Well, just I already did it. So
okay.
Without seeing any slide.
Okay. All right. Are we ready to move to Q&A or?
Well, actually, maybe we have to wait for some questions, or we have to give some answers.
Okay. I think I'm going to stop sharing, and then we can. I was going to just comment further on. You brought up some really good points as well. So I think one of the things that you know, you're basically talking about the lighting and the effects and all of that. And I think one of the things that AR has really made me appreciate more is what we're really dealing with here is human perception of space and light, and that does not necessarily translate to actual space and light in the real world. And so as a 3D professional, somebody who's been in the 3D field for more than 30 years at this point, it feels deeply unsatisfying. But I'm always amazed actually at how sophisticated actually our vision and perception is. And so it's really about creating something that satisfies you from that perspective. And so frequently the lighting is really key, as Katherina said. So the more improvements we can get in that, the better. What we find generally right now is that the automated lighting, shadows, lighting effects are not realistic enough or provide consistent results on the quality of the models and the textures. And so frequently we take an approach where we bake in what's called baking in the lighting. And so the trade-off there is you get higher quality kind of textures and content, but it doesn't necessarily reflect the real ambient lighting at the time. So those are just kind of, you know, questions, artistic questions, quality questions, that choices that you make on each project. So how long did
Julia, at the end of the day, we talk all the time about immersion. So we talk about feelings, and feelings are inside our brains. So we talk about impressionism, let's say. So if we have a feeling, if we have a feeling, some kind of perception of something, it's just good enough. So sometimes it's enough to see a very strange character. So we don't need to show very realistic shim to arrive. Right. So it could be something very nice, fluffy, and it's good enough. But still, from the point of technology, from the point of even perfection, we need to move ahead and show that the same graphics as we can see from the movie, we can move it to our augmented reality. And that's why we need such instruments as 5G.
Agreed.
Because we know how to do it. I mean, technicians, we know, but we don't have enough traffic and we don't have enough hardware to arrive to it.
Yes.
So the biggest case also is about smart glasses, but it's another topic. Let's leave it because I will not finish anyway my discussion. So
yeah.
We have a question from Cassie. How long did this project take from, let's say, idea to deployment?
Yeah, well, we had COVID in between, as I mentioned, so it took years because of that. Really, the project was conceived in, let me think about that, like I think it was 2018, through just I've been working in the neighborhood a long time and just, working with stakeholders there and familiar with the history and learning more about it. So the project from concept was really conceived in 2018. We had originally planned to deploy it in spring of 2020. So about a year, not quite a year and a half later, but then COVID hit. So ultimately, we ended up deploying it this past summer at the end of August. So all told, it was really a couple of years from start to completion. I would say in terms of actual design and production, we really went into that heavily, it was probably about a 6-month cycle. Depending on the amount of community engagement you want to do, and that was really one of our goals with this, it really takes about a year to get meaningful community engagement. But in terms of design and production, you could, once you know what you're going to do, you could do something like this in 12 weeks or so. It would be a push, but we've done it in less, but I don't recommend that. I know, Katherina, if you want to chime in on your side about that too.
Well, actually, the biggest part of the project, of such project, the longest part is still that one that belongs to the way of communication between the community, the way of education of the community. And so that's why this project was quite unique, because we didn't talk about millions of dollars or whatever, and some trial that at the end of the day is nothing technologically, but we talked with, let's say, ignorant from the point of view, technologically ignorant community. Correct me if I'm wrong. So people who, let's say, it's not a primary goal for them to talk about metaverse, to be in metaverse and everything, but they believed. So at the end of the day, they believed in the technology and they contribute with their soul to this project. So even children. And for us, it's a big case, to be honest. It was quite challenging anyway, because to work with children directly, I mean, to get some kind of feedback from them. And then after that stress, we worked with artists, because they are very careful with technology and everything, because there are a lot of stuff right now around, and actually artists look at such technology with quite with quite unsure feeling, because they don't care about hype, they care about feelings, they care about beauty of their masterpieces. So at the end of the day, Julia convinced them to do it. And for us, it was challenging to do it as shared error experience. So not only for one mobile phone, but for multiple users. So for us, it was a big case as well. So 12 weeks maybe, but it depends on graphics, to be honest. And years and years still of education of our audience. So
yeah, great. That was well put, right? I would say really, if for meaningful community engagement, you really need like a 6-month design cycle, community engagement and design cycle for sure. And then I would give yourself, 3 to 6 months for development, for design, and creation and development.
Julia, at the end of the day, design depends also on, let's say, money.
So, absolutely, right.
Well, that's the case. If you have money and you need to develop good design, you can do it even in, let's say, 2 months.
Absolutely, yeah. So that's what I say. It's a difficult question to answer because it's not really a question of production for this project. It had so many other factors. There was a lot of community engagement, a lot of design, a lot of research on the history, those types of things. So like we took the kids on field trips to learn about their neighborhood, for them to discover what stories they wanted to tell. So, all of that, So, okay, is there or will there be, is there or will there be a spatial audio dimension? Great question. We do not have that right now. Would love to do that. Yeah, I think that would be super cool. Definitely. Okay, any other questions? What is the idea of, they asked, okay.
Well, what is the ideal project? The ideal project is in terms of what? In terms of graphics, in terms of everybody who wants to look, they can look at it. So it doesn't depend now. As we talk about Air Cloud, and we talked about shared our experience. So like, I don't know, 100, 200, 300. Julia, what was it?
It varied in terms of the launch event. We had probably about 75 to 100 people there. So the project is live and ongoing. The idea is that it's now a community asset. There's a number of tours, guided tours of the neighborhood. Obviously, those have been on pause because of COVID as well, but they are starting to get restarted. So the idea is that it would be able to be used by local community stakeholders, including tour guides, merchants, and all of that for advertising. So, we would imagine, it's hard for me to imagine there would be more than 100 people at one time. I think more normal will be probably between 10 and 25 people that might be involved in a tour. But I think it's really a question of technical limit in terms of augmented cities, the number of users. I don't know, what is your maximum number of users?
Well, actually, thanks to 5G there in that location, we didn't have too big problems, but with 4G. So if here in this case, we talked about, let's say, 4 or 5 seconds. So we, of course, we didn't arrive to 3 seconds or less, because still it's hardly possible. But 4 seconds for downloading something, it's good enough. Because with 4G, we talk about, let's say, 40 seconds for such a big model. And good comment from Cassie actually about 3D graphics without 5G. It's possible to do because, for these cases, we have technicians and algorithmists, because they can invent the optimized way to show these big models, but it's much more difficult.
Well, I will say, I just will chime in. What we did here, this isn't only a 5G experience. So people were using it with 4G phones. So that was, at least for this experience. So that's something that we're very conscious of in our projects, is recognizing that not everybody has the latest phones and the latest technologies, or iPhones or Androids. And so we're always making sure that our projects are accessible on as many different types of devices and networks as possible. So this one, we designed it so that it would be capable for the broadest audience. But certainly 5G, I think where we really notice the biggest impact of 5G is really loading of content. So that is an issue. So as Katherina mentioned, with this app, we tend to like to download our content at the time of app open. And so 5G like literally cuts that time in half. So this project, depending where you are in the world and what server it's accessing, and that's part of the reason I was saying earlier is the edge computing is actually a big piece of this puzzle as well. It's 5G with edge computing. So for instance, in San Francisco, this content happens to be on a local server there. So like literally it is like less than 10 seconds. It's faster than in San Francisco at the park. They have like the highest level of 5G available. And so it's like less than 10 seconds. So, but here I'm in Seattle and I have a test bed here so we can work with the project. And it does take longer. I would say it's more like 20 seconds. But when I compare that to say with a 4G download, that's like 40 seconds, if not more. And I know Katherina, when they're downloading it in St. Petersburg or Italy, it takes 40 seconds, right? So those are, it's all of those things.
We talk about very medieval streets, very narrow streets where there is not, we don't have sometimes not only 4G, but 3G doesn't work properly. So that's why we have to, let's say, cover in our way, in our technological way, with some kind of, if we talk about navigation, because for example, we did a project in a small town, it's called Angera. So there a small snake guide you to a castle. So, and this snake guides you along a very, very narrow street sometimes without any internet or Wi-Fi. So, of course, we needed to cut to pieces every, let's say, pass, and then combine it with some downloading elements, let's say, in the application. So the end user doesn't see so much the gaps between. But of course, with 5G, it would be much more easier to do. So,
yeah. Did you have problems with different people not having devices that work with 5G? So yes and no. Like I said, we definitely designed and created the specs of the models and everything to work with 4G and as big a number of phones or types of phones as possible. There were a few folks that had problems. It frequently boils down to if a lot of times if they have the latest AR Core or AR Kit on their phone. We have run into problems with some Android phones more than iPhones. But overall, it was not a problem. There was just a few folks that had some issues. But overall, it was not a problem. Like I said, it really just gets to the timing. And so when you have a launch event like that, it's great. Obviously, everybody is there for the specific event or the specific app. And so they're kind of, have an event kind of psychology in their head. And so they're willing to kind of wait. But if you compare, if they have a slower phone, right, if it's going to take them 40 seconds. But if you compare that to somebody that, say, is out on the street and maybe just is discovering this on their own, asking somebody to wait 40 seconds or longer in that kind of situation, you kind of risk them aborting the app and aborting the experience. So that's really kind of where I see, the 5G and edge computing is really helping, actually helping to retain user engagement and actually get them into the experience. So hopefully that helps.